So our learning target today is I can evaluate algebraic expressions that have fractions and absolute values. So I want you to consider, how old is Mickey Mouse? So take a guess, type it in the box. It says your guess. So for example, I'm going to guess that he is 73. All right, type in your guess. His actual age is 91. So how off were you? I was under by 18. So the negative sign here represents under. So maybe if you guessed over, you'll have a positive number. So let's say you have a classmate named Maria and her guess was off by -2. So she guessed wrong. She was under guessing by 2 years. Then you have another classmate named Landon whose guess was off by +2. So they were over by 2 years. Who is the better guesser, Maria or Landon? It doesn't matter if Maria was over or Landon was, or I'm sorry, if Maria was under and Landon is over, they're still only away by 2. So they're the same. They're both away by 2. So in a situation where you're trying to tell the reader that you don't care whether the answer is above or below a value, we use something called the absolute value. So the absolute value is indicated by these bars right here. So why do we use absolute value? We use absolute value to show the distance a value is from 0. Right? We don't care if it's over or under. So an absolute value tells you that whatever number is in here, inside those absolute value signs, we don't care if it's over or under. We just want to know how far away is that number from 0. So think about this number line right here. We have the absolute value of -4. So that's saying I don't care that 4 is below or above. I just want to know how far is it to 0. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Same thing with the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So both numbers have the same absolute value because they're the same distance to 0. The way we read this is called the absolute value of -4. Okay, so how far away from 0? We've got the absolute value of -5. So how far is -5 from 0? You would have to take 5 steps. The absolute value of 1/6. How many steps do you have to take to get to 0? You would take 1/6 of a step. Here we have two absolute values. So the absolute value of -19 is 19, and the absolute value of 5 is 5. After we take care of the absolute value, we add to 20, we get 24. The next problem, we always do absolute value first. So the absolute value of -6 is +6. The absolute value of 8 is 8. Then we do our multiplication, and we get -12. We do absolute value first. 24 minus 50 is -26. The absolute value of -26 is 26. So our final answer is -26. Then our last one, we do the absolute value first. That would give you +8/5. And then when I multiply these two in Desmos, my final answer is -16. So where does absolute fall? It falls under the grouping symbols. Absolute value is done with brackets and parentheses. So when we're evaluating expressions, we do the same thing that we did the last few days. The first thing we do is we replace the variable, or we put the variable in parentheses. Step number 1. Then we substitute. Once I substitute, I'm going to follow order of operations. Grouping symbol. Yes, we have grouping symbols. This right here is a grouping symbol, so we're going to take care of that first. And inside of that, we always follow order of operations again. So inside those grouping symbols, I'm going to do the multiplication first. Then I'm going to do addition. The absolute value of 4 is positive 4, so our final answer is 1. In our next problem, I'm going to put the variable in parentheses first. Then I'm going to substitute my values in. G is for grouping, so I've got some grouping symbols here up top. I've got absolute values, so I'm going to take care of that first. The absolute value of 3 is 3. I take care of the top, so I've got multiplication is negative 30, so my final answer is negative 2. Same as usual, I'm going to replace my variable and put them in parentheses. It's tight. Oops, sorry, this is an N. Then I'm going to replace the values. So I'm going to go through PEMDAS. G is grouping symbols. Yep, I see my absolute value, which is going to be 12. The absolute value of 12 is 12. Sorry, since I'm a little messy. Exponents, I don't see exponents, but I do see radicals. So radical, I'm going to do that next. Remember, the index is 3, so we're looking for a number that's the same 3 times. That makes 125. And the answer to that is 5. 5 times 5 times 5 makes 125. Next is multiplication division, so I get negative 6 minus 15. Finally, we get negative 21. All right, last problem. I'm going to replace the variables and put them in parentheses. It's a lot of fractions. So we start with the top first. Grouping symbols, no. Exponents, no. Multiplication, yes. 3 times 2/3 is going to be 2. Plus 2 times 3/4 is 6/4, so that's 3 over 2. So a lot of students get stuck here. So if you're not good with fractions, you could put this in Desmos. So 2 plus 3/2 over 1/2, or if you think about 2 plus 3 over 2 is 1, this is 1.5, so this is, if you do common denominators, this is going to be 4 over 2. So it would be 7 over 2 divided by 1 over 2. And when you divide, you actually end up multiplying by the reciprocal. So 14 over 2, and the answer is 7. Again, if you're not good with fractions, I would suggest that you put those calculations into Desmos to help you figure out your final answer.